Hey everybody! So today we're continuing along with our season previews and we're talking about the Chicago Blackhawks. Before we get into the video, I just quickly want to say that if you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that like button. It helps out a lot with the channel. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscribe button and follow along for great hockey content all season long. So, Chicago missed the playoffs last year. Kind of a team that's been going through a quick rebuild, not a full-on rebuild, but a pretty quick one, and honestly has done a very good job of it. And they've acquired some really good young pieces while maintaining, the core of Taves, Kane, Keith, Seabrook. They've kept the the important parts of the core together while adding a lot of young talent into this roster. Chicago is a very well-run organization. They know what they're doing, and you knew that you weren't going to keep them down for long. This is a team that I think can compete for a playoff spot this year. They were pretty close last year, and I think that they will be right in the middle of the playoff race this year. They're certainly not a team that I guarantee a playoff spot to. I don't go into this expecting Chicago to make the playoffs, but I definitely think that they'll compete for it and that they'll be right there till the end. And this is a team that I could easily see making the playoffs, and this is a team I also could see maybe just being a little bit short and needing one more year before they get back to the postseason. But they're definitely one of those teams with a chance, absolutely, to make the playoffs. So, for their roster and their line combinations, I use a mixture of daily face-off and cap-friendly, and I go with what they have, or I maybe make a few changes here or there, but I base my line combinations off of what both of those websites have. And this is what we've got for Chicago. So, now, everything online lists this line as their second line, but to me, this is Chicago's first line. Alex DeBrincat, Dylan Strome, and Patrick Kane, that is their first line. That is where they get their offense from. 2 40-goal scorers on the wings. Dylan Strome, who did not have a great start to his career in Arizona, looked fantastic after being traded to Chicago last year. Really, really good young player that I think is going to have a breakout season for the Blackhawks this year. With goal scorers like DeBrincat and Kane on your wings, it's hard not to have a great season. I think they're going to get a ton of offense from that line, and that's going to be their top line this season, meaning the second line is Brandon Saad, Jonathan Taves, and I have Brandon Perlini on the right side. That's kind of an open roster spot. That right side, there are multiple players. There are some younger players that could come up and compete for that spot. Perlini could get that spot. Andrew Shaw, given he almost had a 20-goal season last year, maybe could get that spot. There's options there on the right side of that second line. I have Perlini there for now, but that's going to take the preseason in training camp to figure out. Pretty decent second line there, not as offensive, obviously, although Jonathan Taves did have an 81-point season last year. So, some good offense from Taves that we haven't seen that level of offense from him in a little while. Brandon Saad, as long as he's a 20-goal scorer playing with Taves, maybe Perlini can get his goal scoring up and get him over 20. You could see some good offense from that line as well. Overall, Chicago's top six is very good. They have a very, very good top six forward group. Moving on to the third line, I have Dominik Kubalik here on the left side of the third line. I don't know a whole lot about him other than he's a 24-year-old winger. Did not play in the NHL last year, but we'll see what he does. He's certainly going to be in camp looking to earn a solid roster spot in Chicago's lineup. Ryan Carpenter coming over from Vegas. I have him centering the third line. He can play center or wing, but the center situation is interesting. Obviously, Strome and Taves are your top two, but after that, it's kind of an interesting situation because you have a lot of guys in this bottom six who can play center or wing. And I don't really know who's going to end up playing down the middle, who's going to end up on a wing, who's going to end up on the third line, who's going to end up on the fourth line. The bottom six, we kind of have a good idea of who the players are going to be, but we don't know what their slot in the lineup is going to be. So we'll see how that all turns out. But I have Carpenter there for now. And Andrew Shaw on the right side. Shaw had a very good year last year for him with Montreal. You know, he's not a huge offensive producer like he was when he first came into the league. He was kind of a gritty third line guy who could fight and hit a little bit, but also showed some promise offensively. Then he had some injury issues. The offensive numbers went way down. Kind of became that bottom six grinder and still contributed to the lineup, but the offense really wasn't there. The offense came back last year, 19 goals, 47 points, and only 63 games played. So if he could have stayed healthy and played a full season, you're looking at a 50 plus to 60 point season from Andrew Shaw and easily 20 goals. If he can do that this year with Chicago, that's going to be a huge boost to their secondary scoring. And I think there's a reason they brought him back. A lot of people didn't like the trade that brought Andrew Shaw back to Chicago, but given how he played last year, why not? I know it feels like you're kind of, getting the boys back together and kind of retreading the past and what worked in the past, and that did not go all that well when they brought Brandon Saad back. But Andrew Shaw had a very good season last year, and if he can do that again this year, I think he could be a huge contributor to this team and possibly getting them to the playoffs. Fourth line, Zach Smith coming over from the Ottawa Senators. Really good veteran player. Must be ecstatic to be out of Ottawa. Just a solid fourth line guy who can bring a lot physically, bring a lot of leadership, hardworking player, guy I respect and like a lot. He's a good add to that fourth line. David Kampf in the middle, and I have Drake Caggiula on the right side, although there are some other players that could possibly compete for that spot as well. Moving on to the defense, Duncan Keith and Eric Gustafsson is the top pair. Eric Gustafsson had 59 points last year as a defenseman. 59 points and 17 goals, and nobody talked about it. Absolutely nobody talked about Eric Gustafsson last year. He had a remarkable season on the back end. 27 years old. Just what a season from him. It will be interesting to see if he does that again. Second pair, Calvin DeHaan and Brent Seabrook. Now, DeHaan coming off of surgery, don't know where he's at in his recovery. He may not be there at the start of the season. Might be, might not be. But when he's in the lineup, that is a very solid addition to their top four defense. Good veteran guy, defensive defenseman, will help out defensively a lot there. And then that leaves Olli Mata and Connor Murphy as your bottom pair, which quite honestly is not a bad bottom pair by NHL standards. I think that that particular role, they'll both be fine. Corey Crawford in goal with Robin Lehner now backing him up. Cam Ward obviously retired. Lehner coming over from after having a Vezina-level season with the New York Islanders. That's going to be huge, I think, because one of the things that has held Chicago back over the last couple of years, I think, is goaltending. Corey Crawford is unable to stay healthy and play a lot of games in a season. Last year, he only played 39. Crawford's a good goalie, but he's got lingering head issues, concussion issues, and staying healthy has been a problem for him. And Chicago has not had the backup goalie that could start a significant number of games and win a significant number of games. Now they do with Robin Lehner, a guy who led his team to the playoffs last year. So if Crawford can only play 30 games this year and Lehner has to play a lot, that's fine. Lehner can do it. He showed that last year. So I like their goaltending situation a lot better now. And I think that's going to increase their win total this season simply by improving their goaltending. So overall, I think this is a team that absolutely is in the conversation for a playoff spot. The Central Division is very difficult. There's a lot of good teams there. We all know that. But this is a pretty good team on paper, and they are even better than they were last year, I think. They've made some good additions. As far as extra players go, Dylan Sakura will definitely be competing for a spot in camp. He's a guy that could take one of these right side spots. If you don't want Perlini as high as the second line, maybe you put Sakura on the second line and drop Perlini down to the fourth line. That's certainly a possibility. Also, John Quenneville, who coming over from New Jersey, who they traded John Hayden for. He can play center or wing, and he's a guy that will compete for a bottom six spot. And then on the defense, we have Dahlstrom here, who possibly could, if DeHaan is out and can't start the season, Dahlstrom will probably get a crack at the top six, and he'll be the seventh defenseman most likely. And then Slater Cuckoo, another depth defensive guy who's now in his second season, I believe, with Chicago. So this overall, I think this team's in good shape. They've done this quick rebuild thing very, very well. And there's a lot of talent there. There's a good mix of veterans and young guys. And this is a team that, I think is a borderline playoff team. They could get in. They might not. They might still be a year away. But they are absolutely headed in the right direction. And I like a lot what I see from them. So, Chicago actually is going to be an interesting team to watch this year. And it's going to be fun to see if they get back into the postseason or not. Also, I think they're going to be a more entertaining team to watch this year. Just with, getting Andrew Shaw back, he spices the game up a little bit. Zach Smith is a pretty tough guy. And then they've got, offense. They've got a little bit of toughness now. I might actually enjoy watching some Chicago games this year, which is usually not the case. But anyway, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.